Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, I got a fun and exciting video for you guys today, because we're going to be taking one more look at Nintendo 3DS emulation in 2025. That is because I've been talking about Azahar updates over the year, and saying just how incredible this emulator is getting after Citra basically left the market. And today we're just talking about how incredibly good 3DS games can look if you have a powerful enough system to be able to do it. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, got a Patreon link down below as well. But I absolutely love the 3DS hardware. I have not one, not two, but three different handhelds, but it's one of those things. Playing it on a big screen TV with enhancements absolutely just makes this feel like a completely new console that you just never played before. And just so you know, I'm rendering everything right now basically in 4K internal rendering resolution and then downsampling it down to 1920 by 1080 for the resolved timeline. And this is just something, if you have the system specs, you're going to be able to do with Azahar, and I can't recommend enough dialing up 3DS graphics. That internal rendering resolution just absolutely makes the games maybe not feel completely modern, but way newer than they've looked on the 3DS. And that definitely keeps these games alive, because a lot of you maybe didn't have a 3DS back in the day. I know a lot of people basically got their handheld Nintendo start with the Switch, especially if you're one of the younger viewers of the channel. But again, even if you have a massive 3DS collection like I do, a lot of times you just want to sit around on your couch and play on the biggest screen possible. Because I will say, sitting around in my living room playing on my LG C4 OLED at basically 65 inches, this looks absolutely stunning and just basically convinces you that it is not 3DS hardware in any way, shape, or form. You just take a look at the quality of the models here and the graphics, and just think about if you ever played Dead or Alive on the actual 3DS. It was an awesome entry and I still have it in my collection, but if I'm going to play it today, I just want to go into this actual big screen mode and dial the ever-loving hell up out of the actual graphics on the engine side of things. And just so you know, as far as my specs are concerned, I'm running an i9 12900K overclocked on a water cooler. I have 64GB of RAM as well as a 3080 Ti, which a few years ago would have been absolutely a beast of a system, and definitely, trust me, it is no slouch today, but it is a couple years old as far as generations are concerned. You won't be able to get all the way up to the highest internal rendering resolutions if you don't have a decent PC, but you don't really need to have my specs to be able to get there either. Trust me, just don't bring a potato to the party and you'll definitely get to at least 1920 by 1080 without really having any issues whatsoever. My advice to you when you're playing around with this stuff is just go all the way to the highest resolution, and if that isn't running well, jump back in steps until you find an internal rendering resolution update that is going to be smooth on your hardware. And if you see a hitch here or there, just be aware that Azahar has to compile the shaders, so the first time you play a game it might stagger here and there just until that shader cache is made, and then you'll never see it again. But this just absolutely blows me away and shows just how good emulation, especially on the 3DS side of things, has gotten in 2025. Something like Dead or Alive here with the internal rendering resolution bumps looks like something like a 3DS 2 or a 3DS Pro. But moving over to something like the Majora's Mask remake on the 3DS, I would say it is the best version of the game to play. It has everything from Majora's Mask as well as everything else that was added in, with all of the different remakes as far as the graphics and models are concerned. But again, if you don't want to sit around playing on a screen that's basically like 6 inches wide, then you can do something like this, and trust me, Majora's Mask looks absolutely stunning when you dial all the graphical settings up. And the nice thing is there really isn't that many to adjust. You can adjust the internal rendering resolution, you can play around with some MSAA, you can play around with some anti-aliasing, but otherwise, this is like a 2-click procedure to get games running and looking better than they ever had a chance to on the 3DS. And it is one of those things. Technically, 3DS consoleization or video output options do exist, but they are definitely for not the faint of heart when it comes to doing the mods and setting them up. So something like Azahar just being able to run as an executable on your PC, just playing on a monitor, takes all that challenge out. And honestly, at this point in time, if I'm going to play a 3DS game outside of traveling around, I'm just going to load it up on Azahar and get these absolutely stunning graphics. Because just take a look at this scene here in Majora's Mask. Everything looks stunning, all of the textures look incredible, and it sounds great as well, which is our first soundtrack sample, and I'll be right back. Not only does it sound incredible, but that's one of my favorite things about emulation of handhelds, especially 3DS on Azahar. Sure, you could put a pair of headphones on and drive them with the amp inside of a 3DS and it sounds good, but if you don't wear headphones, it definitely doesn't sound anywhere near as good as getting something like this running on a good pair of speakers. Now, I have a 5.1 surround sound setup in my living room on my LG C4 OLED, and I love just absolutely dialing the volume up and blasting these games. Now, obviously, they are not designed for 5.1 surround sound, but you can kind of play around with faking it, or you could just do stereo with a center channel, and they sound that much better than they ever did playing out of real 3DS hardware, because I would say the 3DS headphone jack is a decent sound, but maybe not the best sound hardware out there ever. And there's other games that just definitely are more fun in emulation in my opinion. Something like the 3DS version of Kid Icarus definitely has some weirdness in the control department, but it's something that you can make work with some sort of touchscreen emulation in Azahar depending on how you want to set it up. And this game, with all its absolutely bright cheery colors, even when it gets dark, these intense reds, just looks so much better on a modern panel than any sort of 3DS screen. Because the 3DS screen, unless you want that glassesless 3D, really isn't the nicest panel out there in the world. It holds up decently well, but basically any modern panel outside of the 3D capabilities is just going to look that much better. But all of these bright intense whites, these blues here, and how the screen moves around in Azahar when you put that on a good panel just cannot be rivaled by real 3DS hardware. So honestly, at this point in time, for me personally, the 3DS is a system that I'm going to primarily emulate and then go to original hardware if I'm on a trip and feel like playing a game on some of my handheld hardware that isn't modern, like Steam Deck or Switch 2. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me, what do you think of the look of this upscaled image here with the overall internal rendering resolution bumps? I feel like 9 out of 10 people are going to like it, but I know some people just do like the original source look, and that is totally fair as well. But the interesting thing is, I think a lot of the models and a lot of the artwork on 3DS games just look better in a better quality. You realize more of the fine detail the artists at Nintendo and other developers put into the 3DS games, and that is detail that you tend to lose at the stock resolution on a stock 3DS screen. I would say Kid Icarus here, 10 out of 10 any day of the week. I prefer this version on Azahar. The performance is smooth, the overall look is that much clearer and better, and I can just focus a little bit more on the details of all of the fun character designs. But I would say, as far as 3DS games, Kid Icarus may be the worst controlling, but maybe the best looking game that ever graced the 3DS, at least in my opinion, when it comes to it stylistically. You leave me a comment down below and you tell me, what do you think the prettiest 3DS game is out there? I would be curious to hear. But again, this is just incredible. You can pull this off in 2025. 3DS emulation keeps getting better, and Azahar keeps dropping his updates to just basically make it that much more fun for everyone to enjoy the 3DS. Let's move into the second soundtrack sample with Metroid here. Maybe not the best Metroid game ever to come out, but I think again, another one that absolutely excels on a modern monitor. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds and I'll come back and show you some Mario Kart 7, the most improved game in my opinion. Sounds exactly like the game should, looks exactly like the game should, it just looks a lot better than the game you remember it being. And that really is the power of emulation. And I would say, of all the systems that you can basically emulate these days, the number one system that sees improvements has got to be 3DS in my opinion. Sure, DuckStation can do some wild things with PlayStation 1, Dolphin can do some wild things with GameCube and Wii, and PCSX2 can do some incredible things with PlayStation 2, but there's just something about the 3DS, the hardware era, the complexity of the models, that when you just basically categorically crank the internal running resolution, it looks like something that could have been like a Wii U versus an actual 3DS, and that is definitely a high praise to give something like these games. Mario Kart 7, just a game, 10 out of 10 times. I'm going to play this thing on Azahar versus original hardware, especially for the fact that you can basically get some multiplayer going from the couch with controllers without actually having to have 3DS systems in your room. That is the power of emulation. It's just making things look better, play better, and play multiplayer way easier than having to deal with actually networking two 3DSs together. Because Mario Kart 7 is absolutely a banger with some incredible tracks, that is a ton of fun. But just look at this screen right here. This looks like something that absolutely could be original Switch footage, but it is just the 3DS. And even if the Switch definitely is a lot more powerful than something like the 3DS, they can definitely get really close together when you include emulation enhancements in the mix. That's why I just felt like talking about this at the end of the year, because I would say the most improved emulation I've seen so far has got to be 3DS. I just figured I'd do a showcase of how pretty it can be. But we're done. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.